Tonight, markets yo-yo in response to President Trump's new tariff strategy as Congress debates limiting the president's power over trade.
I can tell you for a lot of Oregonians who have 401ks that are being drained out, that's pretty rotten stuff.
Plus,
a very big meeting on Saturday, and we're dealing with them directly.
The Trump administration set to begin direct talks with the Iranian regime over its nuclear ambitions. And a big win for President Trump as the Supreme Court rules in his favor over the deportations of suspected Venezuelan gang members. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Wall Street whiplash as President Trump's trade war heats up. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. A major trade deadline is just hours away. At midnight tonight, President Trump's new tariffs on Chinese goods take effect, marking a sharp escalation in the U.S.-China trade war.
Despite another day of volatile swings in stocks, the president's moving full steam ahead, adding another 84% in tariffs on all Chinese imports, bringing the total to at least 104% on every product coming in from China. This follows Beijing's refusal to back down on its own retaliatory tariffs, and the White House making it clear that President Trump isn't backing down either.
Countries like China, who have chosen to retaliate and try to double down on their mistreatment of American workers, are making a mistake. President Trump has a spine of steel, and he will not break, and America will not break under his leadership.
And it's not just China. Dozens of other countries, including the EU bloc nations, are also facing new tariffs tonight, ranging from 11 to 50%. The White House says Mr. Trump has spoken with several world leaders, but so far he's not backing off. Administration officials now frame the tariffs as bargaining chips aimed at forcing better deals, not permanent policy. Economists still warn, though, if this escalates, consumers likely will pay the price.
From the White House to Capitol Hill, global reaction to President Trump's tariff strategy is prompting calls to action for congressional leaders from both parties.
Senators sought answers today on the economic impact increased tariffs could have in the long term and whether Congress should get involved in the process.
CBN's Michelle London has more on this concept and joins us live from Capitol Hill. London, bring us up to date on the highlights.
Well, John, Jenna, good evening to you. For starters, Democrat Senator Ron Wyden announced a new bipartisan bill that he says will, quote, end the latest crop of global tariffs that are clobbering American families and small businesses. He then questioned Trump Trade Representative Jamieson Greer about the impact of global tariffs. Take a listen.
You said the president's strategy is already bearing fruit. Well, I can tell you for a lot of Oregonians who have 401ks that are being drained out, that's pretty rotten stuff. And you ought to realize how serious this is for the country. Now, everybody in the administration practically has a different story about the Trump tax hike. So I'm interested in knowing what the story is today. Will higher tariffs go into effect tomorrow as announced?
Senator, yes, they're scheduled to go into effect. We are having negotiations with all kinds of countries at this time. The president's fixed in his purpose. The nature of the emergency that I discussed earlier is not something we can wait on anymore.
Now, Greer went on to say the timeline comes after years of unfair trade practices that other countries imposed on the U.S. and that the issue won't be solved overnight. Meanwhile, Senator Maggie Hassan labeled Trump's tariffs as the largest tax increase in more than 50 years. The New Hampshire Democrat then estimated the extra cost to the average American family would be almost $4,000 a year. Members from both sides expressed concerns about the impact on their constituents. Republican Senator James Lankford talked about the effects on farmers and ranchers in his state of Oklahoma. Meanwhile, Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley blamed the previous administration for the current deficit while questioning the wisdom of raising tariffs.
That would very dramatically increase soybean prices. So my question to you is, in the medium to the long term, do you plan to turn these tariffs into trade deals to reduce tariffs and non-tariff barriers? I support that. On the other hand, if the purpose is to stall on negotiations in order to keep tariffs high for the sole purpose of feeding the U.S. Treasury. I oppose that.
And this week, a number of lawmakers introduced legislation to limit the president's ability to maintain tariffs without their approval. Several GOP senators have already signed on as co-sponsors. John, Jenna?
All right, Michelle London on Capitol Hill. Thank you, London. Well, Dr. Jared Pinson joins us now. He is an assistant professor of economics at Cedarville University.
Welcome to you, Dr. Pinson. So we've already seen, and we are seeing, Americans stockpile goods ahead of these tariffs kicking in. What does that signal to you about the kind of impact consumers are bracing for?
Well, consumers are uncertain, just like the business environment is right now. So they're uncertain about where prices are going to move, and so they'd rather buy goods and services at the prices that they can see now, rather than the unknown prices that could happen in the future.
Yeah. What kinds of everyday items could get more expensive if these tariffs do go into effect, and how soon could shoppers really feel this?
Yeah, so the answer could be anything that is being imported. Some of the goods are going to be hit more than others. For example, automobiles, both used and new. Electronics, since a lot of our electronics come from China, Korea, places like that, where they're going to be hit with tariffs, as well as different farm produce. Now, some of that is going to be blunted as we shift into the United States into our growing seasons for some of that. But a lot of durable goods, washing machines, things like that, they'll be hit the hardest.
When do you think we could see some of these spikes go into effect?
Yeah, that's all going to depend on what the inventory is that companies have. So the best answer I could give is sooner rather than later. You know, we're not talking about months away or even quarters away. In some goods, automobiles could be one of those. You could be talking about weeks away, but it's hard to put a timeline on. I think most people don't appreciate how large international trade is and how complex the supply chains are. You're talking about goods, particularly goods, that are manufactured in so many different countries and then assembled in another. So you can have one good that is facing tariffs multiple times.
You know, moving from goods that people can purchase to the concept of things that we store in savings, there's been a lot of market volatility. What kind of effect could this have on people's 401ks or retirement savings? And what would you recommend for those who are jittery and wanting to move things or withdraw money?
That depends on your time horizon. I would caution people from making any sort of rash decisions. I would, if you're looking at the long term, this is just a short hiccup in that. If you needed the money now, well, maybe you need to actually make market moves. But at this point, I would consider this more of a buying opportunity if your time horizon is long enough. I understand the jitteries. My 401k is down as well these last several days. But if you're investing with a long enough time horizon, this is not the time to panic.
Jared, do you see these tariffs fueling broader inflation, or do you think they'll stay limited to certain industries?
It's going to depend on what the central bank does. So Jerome Powell came out, I think it was last week, talking about keeping interest rates steady where they are. If the tariffs are causing higher prices and the Federal Reserve sees those as sustained, I would expect them to raise interest rates. The big wild card in this is, are these going to be permanent, or is this a negotiating tool? This is the first time I've heard since this has started that the White House is openly admitting this is a bargaining chip. To me, that changes the calculus of what's moving forward, in that the hope is to bring trade deals to actually lower tariffs around the world and to increase access to markets, rather than this being a sustained policy of higher tariffs.
Okay. Dr. Jared Pinson with Cedarville University, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Turning now to what the Trump administration is hailing as a big win, backing its immigration enforcement policy. The Supreme Court has cleared the way for more deportations under an 18th century wartime law.
While deportations may now resume, the High Court said migrants must now be given due process to challenge their removal. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke joins us now with the details. Caitlin, was this a unanimous decision?
Jenna, no No, it was not. All 9 justices did agree that migrants detained in the U.S. must be given advance notice and the opportunity to challenge their deportation. But there was significant division over the rest of the decision. Justice Amy Coney Barrett partially siding with the liberal dissenting judges, disagreeing with the majority over where and how migrants should be detained. This ruling overturns an order by Judge James Boasberg, which blocked the Trump administration from proceeding with Venezuelan deportation flights, questioning the legality of using the Alien Enemies Act. The High Court did not address the use of that law, but rather overturned the lower court decision on a procedural basis, saying Boasberg never had jurisdiction because it was filed in the wrong court. The justices said it should have been filed in Texas, where the Venezuelans are being held, rather than in Washington. Judge Boasberg today canceled a hearing previously scheduled to review the Trump administration's actions. President Trump took to social media to celebrate the High Court's ruling, writing on Truth Social, quote, "A great day for justice in America." At today's briefing, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt called the ruling a, quote, "smackdown of a rogue left-wing judge who attempted to stop the president from using his core constitutional powers."
The highest court in the land made it clear that the President of the United States has the power to protect our homeland and forcibly remove foreign terrorists who pose a grave threat to families and communities. Thank you to the Supreme Court for upholding the rule of law and protecting the Constitution.
Leavitt said the Trump administration's message to any other MS-13 or Tren de Aragua members remaining in the U.S. is deport yourself now or you'll be locked up and sent back to your home country. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court also weighed in on the case of a Maryland man who the White House admits was wrongfully deported due to an administrative error. The High Court paused a deadline demanding Kilmar Abrego Garcia be returned to the U.S. by midnight last night and announced plans to look into the case further. Speaking outside the White House today, Attorney General Pam Bondi said the Justice Department believes he should remain in prison.
He is a known gang member. ICE testified he was a gang member, and we believe he should stay where he is.
In another announcement today, the White House said the president of El Salvador will visit Washington next week to further discuss arrangements with the U.S. to house Tren de Aragua gang members in its prison. John, Jenna.
All right, national security correspondent Caitlin Burke, thank you. Well, the Supreme Court also sided with the Trump administration on a major workforce case.
That's right. The justices blocked a lower court ruling that would have reinstated 16,000 federal employees fired during a downsizing push. The court said nonprofit groups challenging the firings may not have legal standing. Justices Sotomayor and Jackson dissented. Coming up, new talks, rising stakes, Tehran and Washington closer to coming to the table as a nuclear standoff reaches a boiling point.
Welcome back. A showdown is brewing tonight between the U.S. and Iran. And what happens next could shift the balance of power in the Middle East.
That's right. The stage is set in Oman for nuclear talks this Saturday. But already, the two sides are clashing over how to proceed. President Trump says the United States is holding direct talks with the Islamic regime, but Iran disputes that, insisting the talks will be indirect with a mediator. Iranian officials say they won't meet face-to-face unless the U.S. makes a gesture of goodwill, like lifting sanctions or unfreezing funds. And according to Reuters, Tehran says its missile program and regional influence are non-negotiable. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he believes a diplomatic solution is possible, but only if it stops Iran from ever developing a nuclear weapon.
We agree that Iran will not have nuclear weapons. This can be done in an agreement, but only if this agreement is on the Libyan model, where you go in, blow up the facilities, dismantle all the equipment under American supervision, American execution. The second option is that this won't happen, that they will just drag out the talks, and then the option is military. Everyone understands that. We discussed that at length.
With U.S. bombers now in position and fighting still raging in Gaza and Yemen, the stakes for these talks could not be higher. Trump has warned if the talks fail, it could be very dangerous for Iran. All right, Jonathan Saye joins us now. He is a research analyst at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies.
Welcome to you, Jonathan. It's great to have you again. So we know that Saturday is the day. We're not yet sure if it's going to be direct talks or indirect talks, but already Iran is rejecting direct engagement. So, Jonathan, in your view, is this bluster and bluff, posturing, or maybe a sign that Tehran doesn't really have any interest in negotiations?
Well, Tehran is currently at its weakest right now, internally speaking. There is increasing dissent at home. Their currency is grossly devalued, and they're facing mounting pressure from both the United States and Israel for their military program. For their nuclear program and their military capabilities, including their ballistic missiles. So joining nuclear talks has oftentimes been Tehran's way of buying more time to perhaps delay the process. Now, they have two objectives in mind. Number one, to postpone a potential delay in attack, whether from Israel or America or a joint operation. And on the other hand, we are reaching the snapback decision on their nuclear program and through the United States resolution. So up until October 2025 would be the deadline for the EU to decide whether they in fact want to impose or reimpose existing sanctions on Iran, or whether they are okay with them being lifted. So those are the main two objectives from Tehran by joining the nuclear talks.
Jonathan, you wrote an article today revealing that Iran's supreme leader has put armed forces on high alert and threatened neighboring countries if they allow U.S. airspace access. How seriously should the region and the United States take these warnings, Jonathan?
Ultimately, the Islamic Republic in Iran has the vastest and most extensive missile arsenal in the region. When it comes to their naval drills and perhaps speedboats launched by the IRGC, that poses relatively more, perhaps, it's not as much of a restraint on military capabilities when compared to the ballistic missile program. So the main challenge continues to be the missile program, and if they were to move with weaponization, which they are in fact moving forward with, they're able to combine these two capabilities of nuclear and ballistic missile and genuinely pose a threat not to the region but also mainland Europe. So when it comes to military capabilities of Tehran and their malign ambitions, it should not be underestimated. Now, it's a matter of whether they will in fact give in negotiations or not. But most importantly, even if a theoretical deal was reached, the question is, can they provide concessions and, more importantly, guarantees as to whether they will in fact abide by the guidelines or whether they will continue to enrich uranium discreetly like they have in the past.
Just a few seconds left, Jonathan. Israel is pushing for full dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. Do you think there's any chance Tehran would accept such a deal, especially given, as you were mentioning, the current military posture? Again, just a few seconds left.
Ultimately, the nuclear program is their main deterrence, but the point here is that from Israeli perspective and American perspective, the idea was to get out of JCPOA to enact a better agreement. So they should be able to follow through with that and enact something more comprehensive than 2015.
All right, Jonathan Saye from Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Nice to see you. Thank you. And up next, Florida wins it all. The Gators stun basketball fans with a historic comeback and a message bigger than the game.
Jenna, since you're wearing a jumpsuit or a romper, maybe we should shoot some hoops after the show.
Yeah, sure. You first.
Well, Florida fans are basking in the afterglow today after the Gators won the NCAA Men's Basketball Championship in San Antonio in a thrilling win over the Houston Cougars.
Yeah, the game went right down to the final minutes, with the Gators pulling off one of the most dramatic comebacks in championship history. CBN's Will Dawson caught up with a few of the players. And of course, they're still riding high from the win, but also taking a moment to reflect on what it all means.
What an incredible end to an incredible basketball season. The Florida Gators are your national champions. Let's go to the highlights and see how it all happened.
We pick it up in the first half. Florida down 6 early, but Will Richard from the corner makes it a 3-point game at 16-13. Then it's Richard again. The next possession, a 2-point game now. And Will Richard, why not? Ties it at 21. The Gators would go to halftime down 3 points. Second half, Gators down 1. Elijah Martin drives to the basket, gets fouled. He would hit both of his free throws. That gives Houston one last chance. Sharp tries to shoot it, can't do it. If he touches it, it'll be a travel. Time expires, and the Gators win the national championship. Florida overcomes a 12-point deficit for the third largest comeback in NCAA title game history. After the game, I caught up with some thankful Gators.
You told me that you listen to worship music and you pray with your mom pregame. You didn't miss that today.
No, sir, definitely not. Gotta have it every game. That's who I lean on. All glory to God. I mean, just trying to make plays to help my team win, and we knew we needed him in a game like this, and it's a comfort knowing that he's there with you through moments like this.
We know all glory belongs to God. He's a faithful God. He's the author and finisher of our faith, and he said it, and we believed it, and we're just so blessed. We lift him up. It's all God. Nobody but God. Who else could do it?
I'm so thankful to God right now. Throughout the entire course of the game, like even when there was 2 minutes left, we were down 3. Me and my best friend Isaiah got together and we started praying right next to the court, just for peace of mind, because your head's racing 1,000 miles an hour at that point in the game, and you just want to calm down and just experience it. And so we prayed for peace of mind, and ultimately, I don't know, man, it just feels so good to come out on top and win this game.
Last 30 seconds, me and Micah got together and we prayed one more time, and we wouldn't be here without him. I want to give all glory to him. I just want to thank him so much for basically making our team come together in the last couple minutes to pull us out and just take it home. And all glory goes to God on this one. All glory goes to God.
That was CBN's Will Dawson. Thanks, Will. Coming up, a heroic rescue caught on camera. Next on Faith Nation.
Finally tonight, a heroic rescue just in the nick of time.
That's right, a situation quickly turned dire when a Michigan toddler went missing with temperatures falling into the 40s. The 2-year-old's parents reported their child was missing when they discovered their apartment door left open. State and local officials, fortunately, were already in the area when they got the call and jumped into action. 15 minutes later, they spotted the child moving around in a ditch just off the highway, catching the movement there, as you can see on infrared helicopter camera, and that is indeed a happy ending.
Happy to have been there. I mean, we train for this and make sure that we leave with happy endings and don't fall short of that.
The child was found conscious and alert and taken to the hospital.
That is so scary. I think that's any parent's worst nightmare, finding a door open and not knowing where your child is. Wow.
Fortunately, he was recovered, found safe and sound.
Praise God. All right, that's going to do it for Faith Nation.
Have a great night. See you right back here tomorrow.